You are listening to the Dental Business Mastery Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Dental Business Mastery Podcast, and I've got two absolute superstars with me today, and I'm very excited by this because what we're talking about today is a version of AI, and if any of you have been speaking to me personally over the last 2 years, you know that I'm completely and utterly in love with AI. The capabilities it has to help us in our personal work, but also our profession, are extraordinary, and they will just continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But before we start talking about the product, first of all, welcome Jane Bandy and Dr. David Moffet to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for having us. Yes, good to be here.
Oh, it's just fantastic to have you both, and I'm sure everyone knows exactly what you do. But just, you know, if in a 1 minute thing, first of all, you, Jane, what do you do? And then we'll throw over to David.
What do I do? Oh, my gosh, lots of things. So with Jayne AI, it was interesting because the evolution of Jayne AI or Jane Bandy AI really was David's brain. Yeah.
And we'll get into the AI version, but you've got quite a big name in the profession. You've been training dental reception teams for decades now, would I say?
Yeah, thank you for that, Julie. Making me sound good.
It makes me feel better, Julie.
I know. Sometimes I used to look in the mirror and think, oh, why am I getting all these wrinkles? And they are the lines of experience.
Well, I've got to say to you, I haven't always needed glasses, and I started needing glasses when the wrinkles started to come, and I didn't realise they came until I looked at myself with my glasses in the mirror. I'm like, oh, I've just aged 15 years. So there's value on not taking your glasses in with you to the bathroom.
Oh, better than the alternative, isn't it, aging? It's not a bad thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So I've been continuing just, I suppose, at a different level than when I first started. I found I was trying to leverage myself a little bit more, and then I got immersed back into doing a lot of one-on-one, which I've sort of still doing a little bit of. But I think what was happening with the evolution of what I was doing, I was feeling, were the teams I was working with making the advancements? What was I giving them the value that they really needed with the IP and the training that I was giving their team? And again, that's sort of like, which David will go into, the backstory of how Jayne AI all came about. But I felt that there was something missing. And not that I was getting burnout, but all of a sudden I wasn't creating the leverage for myself as well as, you know, offering the team the best quality training and that continuity of results. You know, training can be a good thing, coaching can be a good thing, and it provides results. But if the goal then only becomes you're getting short-term results and they're not sticking like glue and they're not continuing in the practice with it, and that can happen with obviously attrition of staff and all the different changes that happen in practices. I asked a team recently, I said, you know, have you got some systems in place for phone skills for existing team members and new members? And they said, we do, but we've stopped using them. So they really need a system of developing a level of accountability, and how are they going to do that? So as humans, it's quite an interesting uphill battle that can sometimes, you know, get the best of us, and we don't continue with what we should be doing, and we lose that accountability.
Yeah, and when I was listening to you on David's podcast in a recent episode, and you were speaking around that, and I was just like nodding along. Yes, Jane. Yes, that's right. That's right. There are so many challenges when it comes to training team members. And one of the thoughts that I came out with, because your conversation really had me contemplating, where does the resistance sometimes lie? Because sometimes the resistance lies in the practice owner. What's the point of training this person? Team members are so transient already. I'll train her, then she'll go somewhere else. And so sometimes there's resistance from the owner to spend the time, energy, money on getting the training done. But you would have experienced this too. You'll be working one-on-one with somebody and they are quite resistant. And there's an energy there that you're like, we're just not connecting. I'm not quite sure why. And I did a bit of further thought about it, and like I'm putting myself back in a position of maybe a young 25-year-old, and I'm on reception and my boss comes to me and says, oh, I've got Jane Bandy coming in to help train you. And what's the first thought that comes to my mind? Oh, up until this time, I've been unacceptable. I've been inadequate in my boss's eyes. And so when you start to think about the challenges around training a front desk person, no wonder it doesn't get done routinely all the time and over the long term in any particular practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have that fear of failure, that fear that they'll never be able to do it, that confidence, and that, it becomes a self-esteem thing. And so if they haven't got someone on the team that's always in bat for them and lifting them up. Like I just had a training or coaching call yesterday with a long-term client, and a lot of the time when I get off the calls, I know I've imparted some skills. I know I've given them things to then go and action and to hold them accountable to it when we meet up the next time. But sometimes it's that game of, not a game, but that level of coaching where you're trying to lift them up and help them believe in themselves. Like I believe in them, but it's no good if they don't believe in themselves. And for them to realise that it's a worthwhile thing to pursue in their place of work, that it's going to actually spark some joy and give them better satisfaction in what they do every day. Because often that's the biggest reason why people leave, isn't it? They get a bit bored, they don't feel like they're being heard, and it doesn't all, and they're not happy. So keeping that happiness level up is important. And I know it can seem really fluffy, and a lot of people's, if they listen to the beginning of my training sessions, they probably think it's a bit fluffy. Sometimes I think it is, but it's super important because that's those people skills, because we're dealing with people. And again, this is all part of why we've sort of made a little bit of shift into the AI. But again, I think David will probably extend on that a little bit more.
Beautiful.
But it was, and you're right. You're saying 2 years ago you had your eye on all of this, and it's. I was watching a video with Steve Jobs this morning, and he was talking about ChatGPT, even though it hadn't been invented.
Wow.
He was talking about the ability to do these things and to have the foresight. And again, I've always been about people. For me, having those soft people skills has been super important and something I feel like I'm good at. And I got a bit nervous when the whole AI stuff started happening because, well, number one, I thought, oh my God, am I going to lose my job? If they don't need people to train people, what would I do? And then the other thing is I was really anxious about all these people that I really care and support and enjoy working with. Will they become obsolete? Will they not have jobs? So these were all things that were going through my head and things that David and I discussed. And so we had to overcome how we felt about that before we could even make the jump into AI. And, so people won't become obsolete.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think people will become obsolete. Certainly there'll be some roles. I think even, GPs may be feeling it. Lawyers may be feeling it.
Yeah.
There are some industries that you wouldn't normally think that, oh, gosh, those are the ones that possibly you're getting great answers from AI. You don't need to go to the GP so much anymore because I've ChatGPT'd all my symptoms. I'm ready to go. But I agree with you. I think, it is progress. And I find that people that are saying it's just all bad and we've got to stop this and we've got to put restrictions around it, quite possibly haven't stepped fully into it and discovered what it can do, how it can actually expand what we all do individually as well.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly training the practices that I work with, the practice managers that I work with, I'm training them into how I'm a huge lover of Claude, how to use Claude. And it's expanding their skill set enormously, and they're getting greater work satisfaction because they're achieving more and they're learning and all the things. And so it is quite extraordinary, part of the reason why I love AI so much. David, tell us a little bit about your history and then
thanks,
leverage into AI.
So, Julia, as you know and your viewers and listeners know, I was a dentist for 35 years, 28 years in the one location, owning my own practice and then selling it and staying on in that practice. and grew that practice from $120,000 a year in 1987 to $3.4 million turnover in 2011. And Jane came to work in our practice. Jane was, although we have different names, we were married in 1989. I actually had somebody say, "How do you know Jane Bandy?" And I said, "Well, I met her in 1984.
Well, she's right here.
And I married her in 1989. And so after our children were old enough to find their own way home from school and Jane was looking for something to do, she was looking at P&C work. And I said, "No, that's a waste. Come and be a concierge in our practice." She goes, "What's a concierge do?" I said, "They schmooze with people. And they help patients when they arrive to stay in this elevated emotional state rather than dropping down into this pit of despair saying, why are they running late? Why is there dust on this? Why are the magazines torn? Why are those women arguing with each other? Why are they discussing another staff member as if nobody's listening?" All that sort of stuff. Keep the patient elevated, because tragically, in some instances, a patient can make up their mind that they're not coming back before they've met the dentist, even though they have checked in and they were all excited. They go, "These people are ignoring me. They're taking me for granted." And so schmoozing was really good. But when Jane came to work one morning, and we started early, and she dropped the kids off and then come into work about 9:30, I said, "We've got a problem. Both our receptionists are off ill and you're going to need to answer the phone." And so her results for that day were at the opposite end of the spectrum of what they needed to be. She allowed every patient who wanted to cancel. She allowed many patients to leave without an appointment. And she did manage a couple of reschedules as well. And I said, "No, we've got to flip those results." And so she then, with her educated brain, decided that there needed to be better processes and systems. And so when we sold the practice and then left practicing dentistry, and I retired because of arthritis in my shoulder and then in my hands. So I retired from clinical dentistry. I started coaching, and I said, "Jane, you need to coach what you've done so well in our practice, which is helping people to answer the phones as best they possibly can." And so that's where Jane went into the phone coaching. And because she is that sort of person, she easily and quickly became, Australia's #1 phone skills trainer, primarily because she niched herself into that silo. And a lot of practice management people, as you would know, Julie, they've got a lot of spinning plates. They're talking about HR and marketing and all sorts of stuff involved in the practice. And so the phone is kind of like, it's the last thing they really want to deal with, because it is very time sensitive. And so Jane's secret sauce came from the fact that we made and Jane has already alluded to this, we made the mistakes of doing hotel meetings and revving people up on a Friday, and on Monday they get back to work and they've forgotten it all. And then we thought, well, we'll go into the practices and see them. And so we'd go and rev them up at the practice, and then 2 days later they'd forgotten it all. And so then Jane said, well, we've got to listen to phone calls. We've got to hear what people are saying, not tell them what we think they should be saying, but we should be hearing what's being asked, hear what's being replied, and then work out, because some people in a practice might be really good at booking appointments and others might be really bad at preventing cancellations. And so work out what's happening in the practice in terms of the people dynamics. And so listening to phone calls is very time intense. And again, even if a practice manager says, "Oh, we listen in our practice," they can't listen as well as Jane, because they've still got 100 other things that they're meant to be doing. And so that became Jane's superpower, in terms that when we thought, and I thought AI is going to stop, as Jane said, it's going to just take our job. Nobody's going to be answering their phones. This is a no-brainer that phones will be answered by an AI receptionist. But I thought, what's the IP that they source that from? Is it the large language model? And if it's the large language model and they're using Dentaltown or DPR as their database, half the dentists in those forums don't want to be dentists, and the other half are liars about how good their practices are. And I thought, that's a very polluted database to be sourcing IP from. So I then said, is Jane's IP protected, and it is. You can't just go, what would Jane Bandy say in this situation? Because it's not out there. And I thought, well, if that's protected, can we turn that into an AI? But before you build a business, you've got to see if there's a market for it first. No point building a business and then nobody wants it. And so I as you know, I had ankle surgery last year, and it kept me housebound for 2 months, kind of like Jimmy Stewart in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. You know, I'm stuck there just looking out the window of our place.
And now I'm imagining Jane swanning in looking beautiful and providing meals.
She looked after me very well, but our home, as you know, we live on a farm, and so we have light grey carpet and we have red dirt outside. So, you know, even when you're able-bodied, it's shoes off in the house. But when you're on crutches and a moon boot, it's a moon boot for outside and crutches for outside, and it just, you don't go out as much as if you're able-bodied. So I said, all right, let's market to Jane's list and my list. Would they buy an AI version of Jane? And 300 dentists said, yes, I would want it. And I said, all right, we've got a market. We better build it now. And so that's what we've been working tirelessly to do since December. And we're in May now. And it's been tough trying to find partners who have our vision and our work ethic as to what needs to be done. But we're finally there. You know, we've got a Jayne AI that is, in our mind, 85% ready in terms of duplicating Jane. We've also now started organising the API integrations with dental practice software. And as you would know in your job, Julie, it's probably one of the hardest things to get dentists to change is their dental practice software. Even though they love their dinosaurs, they won't go to a cloud-based software, and you need a cloud-based software to integrate with all AI things, let alone an AI receptionist. So that's where we're at the moment. Sorry to take so long in that short version.
Oh, no, that explained everything beautifully. And, you know, being an observer of what you guys have been doing with Jane Bandy AI, I've been so intrigued by it. And I've been so looking forward to this particular conversation, because going into dental practices, and one of the common things I hear is from dental receptionists is there's no time. There's just no time to call those incomplete treatments on that list. There's no time to get that recall strategy rolled out. The phone just rings off the hook. Another complaint that I hear is we can't manage to have anyone answer the phone over lunch breaks. Once all the team goes on lunch, nobody wants to jump out. You know, gone are the days, Jane, when, you know, back in yours and my day, where you'd have lunch and as you're eating your sandwich, you're answering the phone at the same time. You can question it. And so so from my observation, coming into dental practices, knowing that this has been building in the background, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it can be used then and then and then and then and then. I can't believe how many applications. And so it is very exciting. And the 300 dentists that did put their hand up and said, I'm interested in this, there's obviously a pain point out there that they can see this solving.
Well, the pain point is, and Jane's already touched on this, and you as well, Julie, the difficulty is how do we train people, real people, to answer the phone properly? And, you know, or how do we get that job performed by real people properly? And I think one of the best examples was that one of the people who put their hand up was a lady who I interviewed for one of my podcasts, who's a coding expert in the US, helping people use, in the US, they can use medical item numbers to get paid by the government for medical-based dental procedures. You know, sinus, looking at reading OPGs and things like that. And she said to me, I saw that she sent one of the emails across to her husband, and he had replied, and I just thought she was just building my list of people who were interested, you know, padding it up. And then she said, you haven't contacted John. I said, I'm sorry. And she goes, he owns 3 practices of his own. He's not a dentist, but he's a part owner or owner of 3 practices, just opening a 4th. And so I contacted John, and he said, I've been looking at offshore call centres. I've been looking at how do I train people here in the US, and he's in the Midwest. And he said, what really got me excited was when I heard that Jane Bandy was involved in AI. He said, I've been following her for years. So he's a lurker who we didn't even know about. And he said, I want whatever Jane is doing, because he knew from her pedigree that she was, up there as one of the best people. And even though he's in America, he's mainly fee-for-service practice, which is, what our niche is. But that's easily solvable even for network and insurance-based practices as well in an AI. But I guess that was the watershed for me, that it's not just an Australian market, it's a global market. And you mentioned, Julie, you can, as a practice owner and a practice manager yourself, before now coming into consulting, and as well as in consulting, you can look at a day and say, all right, at this point, I've got to be ready to do a case presentation, because it's a big case presentation, and you can be ready, and all of a sudden another patient walks in, a new patient walks in, the hygienist brings someone out, the phone rings twice, and what do? You dump the phones and you struggle. And so any AI, be it Jayne AI or any AI, will answer every phone call without the phone even ringing in your practice. So that's a big win for everybody, because statistically, and Jane knows this, and you know it too, Julie, the number of phone calls that, for every 5 phone calls that ring in your practice, 2 don't even get answered. They just go to voicemail or nothing. Only 3 out of 5 get answered. And so if you're increasing that everyone's being answered, you're getting a 67% increase in your results if your results are the same with an AI as a person. But if your AI is never going to make a mistake because they know the sequences and they don't get flustered, you can raise that 1 out of 3 that gets answered and gets converted into an appointment to 2 out of 3, which becomes 2 out of 3 multiplied by 1.6 becomes 3.2 out of 5. So all of a sudden you've gone from 1 out of 5 making an appointment to 3.2 out of 5 just by having a decent AI receptionist in your practice.
Yeah.
And that's the winner. And then the other winner is that your flustered staff, who are always feel like somebody's watching, somebody's listening, those people can then be trained to be better case presenters and better schmoozers as well. And it's the customer service thing that really wins as well. Wouldn't you agree, Jane? Oh, sorry, Julie. We're going to take over your podcast.
No, please go. You're trained in this space.
Hand up. But I think that's exactly where the joy is with what we're about to do, is the fact that team members can now spend more time with their patients. And that's really where the whole core of customer service and patient experience comes from, those human interactions when the patient is actually there. And that's really missing from so many practices. And not because the team don't care, not because, they don't want to do it. It's because they're trying to, as you said, juggle all the balls and get everything done. And so after a while, they become administrators. So we're trying to move them away from being that, it's dehumanized them really, in a sense. So we want to, AI is actually going to make people crave more human interactions, because they're sort of getting it with the AI, because we're trying to make AIs more human. But will we ever totally replace a human? That's what we want there to always be, that contrast, so that people will be yearning more of what has been missing for so many years. You think of the 50s, 60s and 70s and even the 80s, where, customer service and was such a big thing with businesses. And then it sort of started, technology took over. It was automation, everything was taken away, and then all of a sudden we stopped talking. We're sending SMSs, we're not picking up the phone, communicating anymore. So we've stopped that. So I'm hoping this will be it'll be a new revolution, won't it? It'll be like a shift back to what we had before that was working really well, and we threw it out. Did we throw the baby out with the bathwater maybe? Like it was working really well when we were interacting with each other, and then we're not. And it's such a big thing, isn't it, in the news lately when talking about children, the next generation, how they don't communicate with each other. I think this, with AI, I think there's going to be such a big jump into not talking to humans that all of a sudden we're going to want it even more. even the new generations coming through, they'll see something's missing finally.
I agree with you. I feel like the world
Yeah.
is shifting to needing more connection and really loving, effective connection when we do come across great rapport builders and great communicators. And this is where I don't see AI, Jane Bandy AI as replacing anybody, because nothing beats having a well-experienced, knowledgeable, trained in communication receptionist, physical receptionist answering the phone. Nothing beats that. How often does it actually happen that we have that? Sometimes
Yeah.
people are entering into the reception and they haven't been trained. And so we've got people who maybe there's a language barrier. Maybe they don't have the level of confidence. Maybe they're just gathering data rather than actually building any kind of rapport. Maybe they're rushed. But then we also, if that great person isn't answering the phone because they are in the middle of a conversation with another patient, then what happens with that phone call? It either goes ring, 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 which is terrible, or it goes straight to message bank, which
Yeah.
I don't love. How many times have we left messages on people's message banks and we never get a return call in any quick kind of fashion? And so whenever we leave a message, we've got the fear, no one will probably hear that. I'm going to have to leave it on my list to call this dental practice again. And then we've got also some people have overflow calls being answered by VAs in other countries as well. And I know that space has evolved and become more refined and better. But as a person who experienced that, as a testing it out, you still know that that nobody in that practice is actually answering that phone call. I feel it still feels like, oh, I'm kind of Johnny come lately in terms of the kind of patient and the value that I feel like I've been, that how much this practice is valuing me because I've got somebody in a whole other country answering the phone. They don't even have a team member answering the phone to me.
And just, sorry to interrupt you, just going back to what you were saying about leaving messages, because I'm listening to a lot of phone calls every day, I'm shocked at how many people do not leave messages.
I agree with
No
you.
message. And you know what made me reflect on that? I don't even leave a message for my mum.
I agree. I'm going to leave a message for anybody.
My mum will ring me. She'll probably listen to this podcast, but she'll ring me, or I'll ring her, and then I don't even leave a message. I just hang up. I go, I'll ring her back later. And with patients, instead of saying in their head, I'll ring them back later, if it's a new patient, they'll just go to the next dental practice they need to ring and hope that someone will answer the phone. So you're not going to miss those opportunities. And I think back to, we need to not lose sight of what's the purpose of answering the calls, is to schedule a kept appointment for a patient. And so we have to look at it in a sense, the efficiency of what we're doing answering phones is not being achieved. We're not hitting the mark. Not many practices, even the really brilliant practices, really get it right all the time. And I know with Jane Bandy AI, there might be, and I say this to team members, we try and convert most of the calls most of the time. We're working for a high percentage. Will we get that right every single time? No. And Jane Bandy AI, she'll also have situations where there may not be a total conversion. But I believe that just answering the phones, knowing how to follow the steps on a new patient phone call, how to handle the cancellation call, knowing that she's fully equipped and upskilled and ready for that, that's, we're encapsulating everything in her that we're trying to train humans on, but yet being human means there's going to be lots of errors. A lot of people talk about, but AI will be, I don't know, they make lots of errors. I'm thinking, have they not trained humans? Do they not realise that the errors that humans make are huge? And they go on holiday and they come back and they've forgotten everything. And the reason I know is I've been guilty of it myself. All of a sudden you come back a bit rusty and you think, it takes a while, and all of a sudden I don't feel well one day and I'm not at work. And so all of these factors that have an effect on practices and the answering of telephones, that's not going to be an issue for Jane Bandy AI because this sounds weird talking about myself, but it's not really myself.
But it is your voice, isn't it? It is your
Well, yeah,
voice.
there's
It is Jane Bandy voice. Because I demoed it out after I saw you guys up at Sydney at ADX. I demoed it out because I got your permission if it's okay that I demo it out. And this is the point that I want to make to people. This is not a replacement of any receptionists. This is the next best thing, though. This is better than leaving a message. It's better than a phone ringing that never gets answered. Because what I found when I was demoing it, and I'm hearing your glorious voice, and you're speaking in a nice, even, slow, explanatory, friendly, rapport building way, my physical reaction, I was like this. And for people who only listen to this, I'm smiling. I'm interacting. My physical reaction to you was as if I was speaking to you personally. So when you're saying, things like, well, have a beautiful day, I'm like, thanks, you too. Even though I know it's AI. And so my level of connectedness would be more if I was speaking to an actual human being. Absolutely. But if that human being, for whatever reason, can't be answering the phone, in my book, Jane Bandy AI is the next best thing, because for some reason it still connects with another human being, even though you're speaking to an AI tool. It's a different level of you can still build rapport. How crazy is that?
And I think we'll get so used to it too.
I
It's
agree with
not, it might be a bit avant-garde at the moment and we're sort of like making adjustments, but we think about the last, say, 30 years and even back to when we were first introduced to the internet, and all of a sudden it was like, and people were leaving messages on phones. I know that's going way back, but it was like different technology and different ways that we communicate. We've done it in the past, so this will be no different, and we will get used to it. And it's been interesting feedback, because I thought the dentists, and we were recently at ADX in Sydney, so we were talking to a lot of dentists, and I wanted to talk to a lot of team members and get their feedback on it. And I didn't meet anyone that said, "Oh no, I don't think it's a good idea." They're all more than happy to not be answering the phones, not because they don't care and they're lazy and they don't want to do it, but they can see the benefits of it. And they think and they were the ones going, let me go and get my boss, let me go and get my boss so he can talk to you or she can talk to you. And so that I found that very fascinating. And no one said to me, I don't think my patients will like it. That was the one. I sat down with Dave and I said, what do you think the objections will be? Because I prepare myself for, say, worst case scenario of if they ask this, obviously I've got to make sure that I can justify and support what we're doing. But no one said to me, I don't think my patients will like this. If anything, they said, patients will get used to this quick smart. Might be weird at first, like the first time they saw a hygienist and not their dentist. There's all these weird things that have happened over.
And it depends on the demographic. I mean, young people will adopt it like that. Older people might be a bit confused at the start, but I tell you what, if they had the option of having Jane Bandy AI answer the phone, move their appointment time for them, make an appointment time for them, whether it's for a checkup or an emergency or whatever, and have that whole process completed in that phone call in such a lovely way, rather than, would you like that, or would you like to leave a message, or would you like the phone just to continue ringing, or would you like to be put on hold for a couple of minutes? Surely everyone's just going to opt to, let's get this fast
we're
up.
busy and we want to, and it's, and you know what it's like with dental. It's not like you wake up in the morning and go, I think I might ring a dental practice and have a chat with someone. It's like, let's get this painful part. They see that as a painful part because they know there could be maybe a level of discomfort. Who knows? But it is.
It's interesting, Julie, because history is riddled with examples of things that have changed. When they have originally changed, people go, how am I going to get used to that? Let's go back to having to pump your own petrol at the petrol station. In the old days, someone would run out and pump it for you. And then now people would prefer to pack and scan their own groceries. In the old days, you just put them on and they used to have to read stickers with prices. Now everything's barcoded. So this is no different. And it's a logical step. You've mentioned it, Jane's mentioned it, because you can't do everything on the phone. It's easy. There's a lot of appointments that can easily be made by using, like in medicine, a hot doc. I prefer to make my doctor's appointments just using the hot doc app, even though it asks me 100 questions that I don't really need it's just to get test results or something. Same with an AI voice receptionist. It's filling the gap between an online booking system and the real person who, as you've mentioned, may be too busy, may not be able to answer, may put people on hold for a minute and turns into 7. That's one of the things that we hear. Jane used to hear someone on hold for 7-8 minutes, and then they'd finally get back to them and they said, "Oh, yeah, you rang to confirm my appointment. Yes, I can come tomorrow." 8
Such a
minutes.
quick thing. Oh,
Yeah, instead of, and that's easily solvable by saying, "Hi, it's Jane. How can I help you?" And find out what it is before you put them on hold. But it's just like, "Thanks for calling ABC Dental. Hold the line." And so we're taking that sandpaper call out, and we're just going to we're going to massage people's. The AI voice receptionist should be able to schedule crown appointments when you want to do crowns. Schedule perio when your hygienist wants to do perio. It's not just going to be like open the wardrobe, throw the clothes in, close it up, like most appointment books are.
so you can actually
structure
set it up so it's your appointment book is still working
Yes,
well for you.
exactly. And I don't think that the online appointment books are that good at doing that because they don't ask enough questions, and people haven't got enough time to read, and it's like doing a test if you're getting that sort of questions on an online thing. But if you're getting it, as you mentioned, by talking to Jane Bandy AI, you are in a conversation with somebody that you know, and Jane knows this. The female Australian voice of Google Maps. She's a friend of mine. I
Oh, is
met
she?
her in America in 2016, and when
I
I
feel bad.
came
I
back, I
just
go,
changed her voice to a male voice because I updated my iPad and it asked you want to change the voice. And I'm like, yeah, I think I do.
well, yeah, and it's like Jane says, sometimes you call her Karen, and sometimes you call her that woman, depending on the direction that she gives you. But you do get into a relationship, as you said, with the voice that you're used to, and so people will get used to any AI receptionist if it provides them with that level of respect and care and service that they are hoping. And as I said, restaurants the same. Most people want to book their restaurant by just going to an online booking form now, rather than ringing the restaurant and dragging some poor waitress off the floor to answer the phone at dinner time. It's a
Yeah.
logical progression of a need in dentistry because people want instant service, and instant service is available. So we've got to bring it to dentistry.
Yeah, and
And
what
it
you
was
were mentioning, sorry, Jane, go.
Oh no, just quickly, that was a by the side with what David said about. I was at the hair salon the other day, and Maddie, my hairstylist, the phone rang, and she raced over to the phone. She had no one to answer the phone, so she's small business. All the stylists were with clients, so they all looked at each other as if to signal each other who's going to get the phone, knowing it's important. So she ran and got the phone call, came back, and I said, and then I'd been talking to her about Jane Bandy AI, and she goes, "Can you get that here? Can I have that here?" And I said, "Watch this space."
I think watch this space too. I think that's a winner.
Yeah, and it was interesting because initially we were thinking, oh, the big practices, but it's the small practitioners, it's the small little boutique dental practices that are the ones that sadly have the DA running back and forward to the phone, taking like I know that's not ideal. It's not what we train for. We always want specific people in roles, but in the real world, that's not happening. And
Yep.
we still work with clients who that's still happening. We're trying to stop it by saying you're not going to get into too much of a problem if you hire another person to be specific for front office. But this could solve that problem and that dilemma, especially if someone's off sick and there is no one all of a sudden to answer the phones. So this will alleviate all those issues for that small practice. So I think our responses have been a lot from small practitioners because they're sick of having to work out, and to get a temp in to be a DA is one thing, and you have everything, guidelines and everything, but to have a temp come in for front office, it's not as heard of. I don't see that happening in as many practices because it's such a big thing to, how would you do a handover for that to happen? They'd have to know the software really intricately and how you put appointments in, so it could be a nightmare. Anyway,
That's one of the many. I've got a whole list of solutions that this provides. It's or a whole list of problems it provides the solution to. And so, number one, it's better than having that phone just not being answered. Number two, it's better than, and certainly I've experienced it, it's definitely better than leaving a message. There are situations we've spoken about before where you may have a newly appointed receptionist to the role, and so they don't have that level of training and rapport building. And Jane, you would have, with all of the calls that you have listened to over the years, I've listened to a few myself over my career as well, and it just, the people that are superstars, just jump out, and you find yourself so delighted when you hear them. But a lot of them, they're not speaking gladly enough or clearly enough, or they're speaking too fast, or they're confusing the patient, or there's lots of background noise. And this all, the call might be being answered by the receptionist, but it's a compromised result for the patient.
Yeah, true. And this allows you to fix all those problems.
Yeah,
this is
while they're being trained up. There's a fallback there. It's always better than being on hold, because people are always on hold for longer than you think they are, but no one likes being on hold either. Holiday periods where I'm thinking back to the situations where I've been in particular practices over the last few weeks and months, and there's one that they just shut down mid-year and shut down at Christmas time. So still being able to take phone calls and make appointment times while everyone's not there, wonderful. 24/7 assistance. People can ring at 2:00 in the morning and still be able to get assistance. We've got another practice that's transitioning from previous owner to a new owner. And the previous owner had wound themselves down, was only working 4 days a week. So this practice is just not open on Wednesdays. And for him, it was fine. But when you're trying to rebuild the practice back up because you transitioned, not having anybody answering the phone on a Wednesday, in my book, I'm just like horrified. And so it solves that problem. We've got lunch times, of course, we've spoken about. Many dental practices do have to try to figure out how we're going to stagger people's lunches, how we're going to get those phone calls answered when our patients are calling us when they're free during their lunch break, but we're not answering because it's during our lunch break as well. Solves that problem. What about a practice? And again, Jane, you mentioned it before. When you're a brand new practice, starting from scratch, one of the very common thoughts is, I will just employ my DA, not employ a receptionist, can't afford them at the moment, they won't be busy enough, and my DA will just keep popping out to answer the phone. It's not a great practice building strategy, but if you are in that headspace, if that's your situation, that DA doesn't have to be dragged out from the surgery and impact the patient experience in there. And there will be more situations where I feel like this is not replacing your receptionist. This is a buddy to the receptionist that every practice must need, because every practice moves through understaffed. You mentioned before, every practice moves through these situations.
Yeah, and she becomes a team member. Just like, say, you and I and David working with dental teams, I always start off and frame it up that I'm coming in to help you, but while I'm helping you, I'm part of your team. And, and that's what she'll be like for them as well. They'll see her, as you said, as a buddy, as part of the team.
And your role as concierge at David, the family, your practice, the family practice, there might be a lot of dental practices out there that go, wow, that sounds fantastic. Imagine having a concierge at the practice. This would allow you to do it. Now, I am absolutely very aware that the phone calls coming into that practice are so vital that they get managed properly and well. But is there a space there that, well, we want to have our receptionist step up more into a concierge role? They're going to be well supported with people calling back. I've just had my recall reminder. I'm calling to book in, calling back. Yes, I'm coming to that appointment time, the confirmation, all the other things. And this will allow the receptionist to be more trained in rapport building and customer service, but actually developing strong connections. And so rather than having to be held back behind the reception desk, when a patient comes in, a new patient arrives for the first time, they're very aware of it. They can get up from their seat, come around reception desk, welcome that new patient in one-on-one. My name's Julie. I'm your concierge. I'm here to make sure that your visit is absolutely delightful and all your questions are answered. Come on through, sit down with them. This is the new patient form. Are you happy going through this? Would you like me to assist you going through this? And it allows the receptionist to be able to develop that concierge element without sacrificing the phones. But if it's done well, practices may be able to do both.
Yeah. And what about a treatment planner?
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
how many? It's like, yeah, we've got someone that does the treatment planning and they're answering the phones at the same time. Oh, so they're
Yeah.
in the middle of talking about big case stuff with the patient, but they aren't able to move to a consultation room that doesn't have a telephone. Imagine that, a consultation room with no telephone.
And up until today, the alternative has been unacceptable. If the receptionist is not answering the phone, it's unacceptable that they're going to be go straight to a message bank. That's just unacceptable to us. But rethink that whole scenario now, because now there's a different element that can be plugged into your practice that doesn't make it unacceptable anymore to have that receptionist just not answering the phone for whatever period of time when they're doing a treatment planning consult, for example.
Yeah. And I think, people are starting to get this podcast will be great because I love how you've summarized all those issues that will now be solved in one simple solution. And it's not like they have to do anything. She's already fully trained. It's not like here's Jane Bandy AI and we need to train her. Over time, obviously, she's going to be enhanced because, I suppose it's like having the latest sports car. All of a sudden, there'll be a better sports car that comes out. And so she'll get better and better as we do with training. There's always new things that we have to shift. I always look back to when we had the year of COVID. It was more than a year, was it nearly? And all the switches and changes we had to make then. So, she'll be ever changing and adapt to what's needed. And each practice, there'll be a level of customization. So even though, every time that a practice wants something extra added into Jayne AI, every other dental practitioner and every other practice will benefit from those changes to her because they'll get them as well. And, being specific to what the practice is actually doing with their treatment as well. She'll know everything. And if a patient asks about implants and the practice isn't doing implants, she'll know how to handle that conversation. But if you do, she'll know also how to get that all set up for patients.
It's wonderful. It's just such a powerful tool. And it really is. It's not which practices will this suit. I feel like it's going to suit every practice because, we can't always have that superstar answering the phone every single time. So for practices that are intrigued by this, talk a little bit about the demo and what kind of software they need and the next steps to try to get this active in their own practice.
This is over to you, David.
Thank you. So, Julie, there's a demo phone number that we have at the moment. In Australia, it's 029 000 1965. And so they can ring that number and pretend that they're a patient or a new patient calling to book an appointment, change an appointment, question a procedure, and have a run through with Jayne Bandy AI. If they then like that, then there's a sign up process to get logged on. And as I mentioned to you before we started recording, we're at that stage now where we're developing the APIs. So we've got integration with Core Practice already. And so any cloud-based software, Core Practice, Dentally is in our target. We're having discussions with them. Care Stack and Voice Stack, they're the three. Practica, they're the big ones at the moment. The vintage softwares are a little bit more difficult. The ones that are still backing up with tapes and discs in the practice, they're a little bit, but it is manageable, even for those dentists who always want to hang on to those vintage softwares. Just like we all like to hang on to that vintage jacket or vintage sweater that we
familiar.
Yeah, that's it. This may not be in style anymore, may not do the job anymore, but anyway, it's happening. And as Jane mentioned here, if there's a mistake that Jayne Bandy AI makes, it only makes it once. Once we correct that, it doesn't make it again. And
That's very
that's the important,
unhuman-like of it. I like to make
very
mistakes
unhuman.
several times before I
Exactly.
learn.
Yeah. And so you know the as Jane would say when she's coaching front office teams, there's a recipe for a new patient call, the 8 steps of the new patient phone call, and they have to be done in the order, just like cooking on MasterChef. If you put the icing on before you put the cake in the oven, it's not going to look that good or taste that good. But people get it wrong. And so some of the examples that we've heard, listening to phone calls, a 12-minute phone call where a woman rang to make an appointment for her children, and the receptionist didn't. She waited till the end and said, "Oh, by the way, what was your name?" to the lady before, and it didn't ask whether she'd been there before or if she was recommended by anybody. But she knew the names of the children, but didn't know the name of the person she was talking to. And another one, which was a classic, we had. There was a client that Jane and I shared, and they were a children's dental practice. And so a lady rang up and said, I want to book my children in. We've not been there before. And the receptionist just defaulted to, oh, you'll probably want to bring them in school holidays, which was 4 weeks away. So despite the fact that there could have been a vacancy tomorrow or the next week, no, she just went straight to this. And you and I know, Julie, and you've probably beat it into the head of your clients. Orthodontists see children during the day because they're not sitting around from 9 to 3 waiting for school to finish. That it's just what has to happen in a dental business. And so, it's sad when they default to something that hasn't been asked for, and that's what a human being will often do on the phone. If somebody rings up and says, "I need to change my appointment," here's something not Jayne AI specific, but the first thing is not, yes, I can help you with that, but what's come up? Let's find out what it is and see whether we can change that, because the treatment is so important and it needs to be kept because it's urgent. And nobody does that. And, sometimes people say, you know what, I can't, yeah, I've been invited out by my friend, but she's not that good a friend. I'll just, I'll keep the dental appointment.
She lets me down all the time. It's my turn to
Yeah,
leave.
yeah. And giving them the opportunity to change their mind. And it was interesting because recently, training a new team, I asked them what would be the first step if a patient does call to want to move their appointment, which is a cancellation call. And their first reply was to make another appointment. And I said, could there be anything else that would be better and less work for you? And as soon as I said less work for them, a young girl got the answer right, and she said, try to keep them in the appointment. And I said, yes. I said, that gets the overlooked step, the most obvious one that we default to, let's just reschedule. Or even worse, do you want to make an appointment now? Yeah, just ring me when you're ready. Like, it's, and I know they only know what they know. Once they know, they get it. And the good news is with Jane Bandy AI, we're making sure she knows and she gets it right from the start. And yeah.
And I really do encourage people to do the demo. That was the clincher for me. I'm like, it sounds good. Then I did the demo. I'm like, this is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've listened to a few calls back because we obviously get the call recordings, which is quite stated at the beginning that obviously we'll listen to some of the demos that people do to hear how they're handling those calls. It's been interesting because some of the people doing the demos, it's like, don't forget, you're supposed to be the patient. And so they're trying to catch her out. And I'm thinking, would you do that to a human? Like, would I ring up a dental practice, go, now I'm going to see if I can catch out the receptionist? But because we know she's not a human, I think some people have been having a little bit of fun with her. So just to let you know, everyone, when you do make the phone call, please pretend that you actually are a patient and don't have too much fun with her.
Yeah, put yourself in those shoes.
And the other thing, Julie, which when they're doing that, they don't realise that we have their number now. So we can,
you know who it is.
we can do trick calls back on them, like 2:00 in the morning. You've got a car that needs collecting for scrap metal, all those calls. Yeah.
No, but
Can I help you with your solar? Yeah, all those sort of things. Yeah.
most of the calls have been very legitimate and people have been trying to pretend, which has been really fascinating because it's made me realise that the dentists really have no idea what their patients are saying on those phone calls because they struggle pretending they're the patient. So I think front office team members would be better off to ring and pretend they're the patient because they're the ones that hear what the patients are actually asking and how, what they need answered and the questions we ask. And we want Jane Bandy AI to be the one asking the great questions so she can find out more, so she can build that rapport. Even though she's not human, she'll start to build a little bit rapport so that, and this is what we want, so the person who's calling actually forgets they're talking to an AI. And that's when you know that, and you will be able to hear that on those calls when we do listen to some of the practice calls to say, oh gosh, that's worked really well because that conversation was like human to human, even though, and we all do it. I do it with my chat GPT. I do the audio and he's got a lovely accent and, and he started, my son laughs because he's a software engineer. He said, the AI didn't ask, oh, thanks, that I really enjoyed talking to you today because he's a software engineer. He goes, they're not real. I go, I know, but he makes me feel nice.
Yeah, it's
So
a different kind of relationship and it's got its own value. I talk to Claude all the time in the car. Like I'm an avid podcast listener, but now it's a little bit 50-50. So if I'm driving to a client, I'll just talk to, open up Claude and say, I'm driving off to this particular client. Let me talk about a couple of things. Hey, Julie, we're back. Tell me, what's on your mind today? Look at this and this. You're right on the mark there, Julie. That's right.
And look, Julie, this is where it's starting to go. And the jury's out for me on this, is people actually having a relationship with an AI. Lonely people that now have an AI like the chat GPTs that we talk to gather data, they're actually talking about how they feel and getting like a type of therapy. Like
a different perspective, quite possibly a healthy perspective than what's going on in the brain at the time.
Someone to talk to, because we always say that in dental practices, never, ever forget that you need to spend some time with people, and especially when people of an older generation of seniors who are ringing you. And I remember I said this to a team member, don't forget you may be the only person they spoke to all week or for the last few days. That's a big impact on that person.
I haven't even thought about lonely elderly people being able to have a conversation with an entity. That's interesting. I just want to quickly, I know that we're running on late on time. I hope you guys are okay. But I talk about when ChatGPT first came out a couple of years ago, my mum had just moved into an aged care facility. And she was looking at some of the activities and she's like, they could be a bit better. And so I taught her how to use AI, and she printed off a list of activities, took them to the activities director, and the activities director was so impressed. He came into her room and had a meeting about what else can we do? What else can we do? And then she said, and it was really interesting because then he said to me, I want you to do a presentation on AI to all the other residents and the staff. And she said, okay. And I said, what did you say? And she said, I asked ChatGPT what to say. Printed out the presentation I just delivered.
Awesome.
And even with their word jumbles, with their word, how many words can you get from these letters? They write them all up on the whiteboard. She takes a photo of the whiteboard and it counts all the words for them. So she uses it all the time. I love it. Yeah, big use for it. So with there was something else when you were just talking about that element. It did come to my mind that you have to now just start teaching concierge training in team members now too, because that's what it opens up for practices. But I really do see this as such an extraordinary benefit to every dental practice. It can really solve a lot of problems that we're defaulting at the moment to, in essence, archaic methods of managing calls that can't get answered straight away. And why not just give it a try for 6 months? See how it rolls out. See what the impact on your patients are. There's every chance they will feel a little bit, what is this at the start? But then they might find themselves swiftly moving into that space of, I'm going to quickly call my practice anytime I like because my problem will be solved instantly. I need an appointment time and I can book it. I need to move an appointment time. I can book it. I can do it straight away. And all of a sudden it's a pretty positive experience.
Yeah, and it'll be the norm. You'll end up being the practice that, oh gosh, you haven't got AI answering phones. Yeah, and look, we can all be guilty of it, can't we? There's always a bit of FOMO with all of us, that fear of missing. What's that? I'm missing out on that. But it's not. This is something based on knowing it's going to give you good results, and be more efficient for the inefficiencies of what you've been experiencing so far for so many years in your practice. And this is definitely the brave new world.
Brave new world, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Anything else that needs to be mentioned before we wind up this wonderful conversation? I do apologise to all the listeners for my poor voice today.
No, you've done very well today. You've done very well. No, I feel like is there anything more that you wanted to say, David, about?
No, only that because we're building this, from the demand and then back building it, the best way to contact us is just search for Jayne Bandy AI on Facebook. That's the Facebook page. We're updating the URLs because, as I mentioned beforehand, the Jayne AI that we started with is used as a restaurant review site in America, and we don't want to go down the Ugg boot scenario of having competitors using the same name, and so we've branded it JayneBandyAI. And or they can just, the emails that we give you, Julie, they can contact jayne.bandy@thedpe.com or me, David, @theupe.com. They're the easiest ways to get in touch with us.
Terrific. And all of those will be added to the show notes so people can very easily tap into you. But I do encourage everyone, you've got absolutely nothing to lose and so much to gain just by giving this a try and see if it's going to work well in your practice. Just think of all the times that you may have walked past and hear that phone ring again and again and again. And, it hasn't been answered swiftly enough. This can really fill a hole. So thank you guys so much. I am even more excited about it than I was before. So thank you.
Thanks
for having us, Julie. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks. See ya. If you enjoyed this podcast, then I encourage you to head over to Ameena and my website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. You will find all the information that you need if you would like to gain our assistance in helping you and your team achieve great success. If you would like to find out more, you can also email us directly at info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Thanks so much for listening.